1, 2, 1, 2.
Try that again.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Hey, Ari, say please silence your.
Okay.
Please silence your cell phones.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Ari.
Okay, so everybody's in. I'm gonna.
All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. My name is Quentin Ring. I'm Beyond Baroque's executive director. We're all thrilled to have you here on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. And we're especially thrilled to have you here for a celebration of Bert Meyers, truly a great poet. Yes. Before we get to the program, I just want to say a few words about Beyond Baroque. I'd like to begin first by acknowledging Beyond Baroque's presence here on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Gabrielline and Tongva peoples. We acknowledge the wrong done to these peoples through settler colonialism, genocidal practices, and the violent dispossession of their land. And as an arts organization, we are committed to uplifting Indigenous writers, communities, and their art. Just a few words about Beyond Baroque itself. We are Los Angeles' oldest literary institution, founded in 1968 by George Drury Smith. That makes us 55 years old this year, which is a remarkable thing for an arts nonprofit in the United States. We will be celebrating that in the fall. We'll have a gala. We'll have another edition of the Southern California Poetry Festival, some special programs. So please do come back in the fall and check out some of what we're doing. But we exist to support writers and to nurture new writing and to develop ties between poetry, literature, and other arts. We have writing workshops. Our free Wednesday night poetry workshop has been running continuously since 1969. Every Wednesday, there are quite a few alumni of that workshop in this room, and the current facilitator is in the room also, Jim Cushing. We also have a Monday night fiction workshop every Monday, and in a similar sort of vein, we have paid workshops, and we also have a reading performance series right here in this theater. We have roughly 80 to 100 events a year here, pretty much every weekend. We've got a great lineup coming up. One of our readers, Dane 11, is going to be back on Tuesday with F. Douglas Brown and Medley J. Graham. Please come back for that. After that, we'll be taking a little bit of a break. First week of July, we'll be back sort of later in July with some more programs. We have a special community potluck on July 22nd in collaboration with Safe Place for Youth. And we have another event later in the month with Rhonda Gerard and Gayat Almunidin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But focused on exile. Gayat is a Palestinian Syrian poet. Rhonda's Egyptian and Palestinian American. That should be a great program, so please do come back for that. And if you would like to support what we do, I'm obligated to make this pitch. Please do consider becoming a member of Beyond Baroque. It costs as little as $60 for individual membership. $80 is a dual membership. We have levels above that. We happily accept $1 million if you have it. So please see Catherine in the bookstore if you're interested in becoming a member. You can sign up online. It helps keep these programs free. We're currently renovating the space. We're redoing the patio in the back. So your support also goes to all of that. And we really do appreciate it. I should also say thank you to our staff this afternoon. Eric Alberg in the booth running the sound. Thank you, Eric. Jimmy Vega, our assistant director. Yes. Catherine King, our intern in the bookstore. And also, yes. And also Yvonne Salinas, our programs coordinator who couldn't be here, but who helped set this up. And Michelle Raphael, our wonderful development and communications director. So without further ado, I think we'll just get into the program. This is a special program. Beyond Baroque, one of the things that we do is sort of nurture intergenerational ties between writers. Being around as long as we have, it's really developed a sense of community over generations. And that's very much focused on Beyond Baroque, but one branch of Beyond Baroque that's very important to us is our ongoing connection to Pitzer College. I myself graduated from Pitzer. I'm not a huge alumni person, but it seems appropriate to talk about it. I graduated from Pitzer. I grew up in Claremont. And the writer we're celebrating right now this afternoon is Bert Meyers, who taught at Pitzer had a profound influence on the college. Everybody who's reading here this afternoon felt that influence and came through Pitzer as well. And that connection lives on here at Beyond Baroque. Michelle, who I mentioned, arts development director, she's from Claremont and Pitzer as well. Dennis Cooper, our artistic director in the early 80s, went to Pitzer, dropped out to come to be a poet. Amy Gersler, one of our readers, was also a Pitzer and later worked here at Beyond Baroque. And Dana and Ari are all from Pitzer as well. So it's just a really wonderful connection that this space has with that community. And growing up in Claremont myself, I knew of Bert. He was passed before my time, but I knew that there's just a great collection of poets in Claremont. Bert Meyers, Dick Barnes, quite a few really just wonderful folks. And I'm just really pleased to be able to celebrate someone who deserves to be much more widely known than they are. And so really my special thanks to Dana for editing this book, for Daniel for getting it out into the world, and for all the readers who are here to celebrate Bert this afternoon. So without further ado, I will bring up Daniel Meyers, who's Bert's son. He's going to say a few more words, introduce everybody, and please just enjoy the poetry and enjoy the afternoon. Thank you so much.
Can't see anybody with these bright lights, but I guess that's how it is being on this end of the camera. In any case, what I want to say is that, all poets die, but not all poetry dies. And it's amazing that 44 years after his death, Bert's poetry is perhaps more appreciated and will be heard and read by more people than ever, even during his lifetime. I keep on thinking that if he knew that I was paid by Poetry Magazine to publish his work, I think he would come back from the dead just to ask me for the money, because he never made anything as a poet. I mean, it was astonishing. He had a really rough up and down life, but I mean, in the last number of years, becoming a college professor at Pitzer gave him two great opportunities. One, to have more holidays and more free time to write and to be with my sister and I and his beloved wife and muse, Odette, my mother, to have more time with us, and also to discover, I think it was a discovery, really, another side of himself that was as a teacher. So I really think of my father, besides thinking of him as my father, I think of him as a really fine poet and also as a really great teacher. And I think it's possibly partly because of a generation of students who were his students, who are now really fine poets in their own right. Not now, they have been for a long time. They've just been evolving that way. But now that some of these poets, like Amy Gersler and Moria Simon, Ari Sherman is here today, and Garrett Hongo, and among others, I think that it's partly because these people have just carried his flame, because he was such a great teacher, inspiring as a teacher, and also they all appreciate his poetry. So I'd really want to say a big, big thanks to this we call Team Bert, the people who I've been very much in contact with for years and helping to get this work out. I have to also say there's another part of Team Bert is here today in the form of two very, very, very dear old friends of my parents, Max and Estelle Novak, who are sitting in the second row there. And they were very, Estelle, I believe, was helpful in finding the publisher for my father's collected works. And of course, again, as old friends and appreciated Bert's work, keeping his work alive. So a big thanks to you, Dana and Amy, Ari, and all of you. And I think Amy will read first.
Really can't see anybody, which is kind of less scary in a way. This is an occasion of great happiness and surprise for me because I despaired of Bert's work ever being in print again. And he is such a formidable and beautiful poet. And if you are not already a member of Team Bert as an appreciator of his work, and you find that you love the work based on hearing it today, buy a book for somebody else, buy a book for yourself. It's amazing work, and I think its work, one of its most amazing qualities is that the politically tinged poems speak as much to our political moment. In fact, maybe even more than they did to his. I want to read just one half of a sentence that my colleague Dana Levin wrote in her introduction to the book that describes one thing that Bert's work does that I kind of can't get out of my head, that I like to have in my head when I'm reading him, and I'm going to give it to you, which is that she talks about how poetry, and Bert's work in particular, has devotion to both the five-sense fact of a thing and the dream that it inspires. I think that's, I'm going to use that when I teach. It's a beautiful quote, and I think it's really quintessentially true about Bert's gorgeous work. I'm going to read 4 short poems. The first one I love because it's kind of like a curse, and I find curses useful. This is called To My Enemies. I'm still here, in a skin thinner than a Dybbuk's raincoat. Strange as the birds who scrounge, those stubborn pumps that bring up nothing. Maddened by you, for whom the cash register with its clerical bells is a national church. You whose instant smile cracks the earth at my feet. May your wife go to paradise with the garbage man. Your prick hang like a shoelace. Your balls become raisins. Hair grow on the whites of your eyes, and your eyelashes turn into lawnmowers that cut from 9 to 5. Man is a skin disease that covers the earth. The stars are antibodies approaching. Your president is a tsetse fly. This one is called Funeral. Surely a dead moth's the skull of a tiny horse, and the moon's a saint who pities the sea. Peace, peace to this child of rain and light, and the people who stay, holding candles and lilies, tasting their tears, naked in a dream, over the long drawer they've closed in the earth. Okay, I bragged at the last reading that we did for this book that I have this entire poem memorized. So I hope you will fall down in homage to great powers of memory when you hear it. This was written in 1962, and it says Cuban Missile Crisis as a kind of epigraph for the poem. It's called Lullaby. Go to sleep, my daughter. Go to sleep, my son. Once the world was water without anyone. I memorized that whole thing by myself. Okay. The last poem that I'm going to read is called Pigeons. Wherever I go to find peace or an island under palms in the afternoon, at midnight to pity my neighborhood, at dawn in the shrubs to look for a child, I hear them. They fly by applauding themselves. I see them, they pray as they walk. Their eyes are halos around a pit. They look amazed. Who are these that come as a cloud to our windows? who rush up like smoke before the town burns. You will find one on a mountain, in a carpenter's shop, at home on the lawn of an old estate, at the library, in the forehead of paradise. Whoever is mad can accuse them. Thousands were killed in a day. What happens to them happens to me. When I can't sleep, they moan. And I'm there, and it's still like that. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. I'm Dana Levin, and I'm very happy to be here at Beyond Baroque. When I was a student at Pitzer College and I came here, I would find poets for the first time. And I remember one indelible Black Sparrow chapbook, which was the very first publication of Wanda Coleman's. And I bought it and I still have it, even though it's falling apart. And I was blown away. So thank you, Beyond Baroque. And thank you for hosting us. When I showed up at Pitzer College in 1984, Bert was dead for 5 years already, but he was still alive in the minds of people, and his poetry was still alive. Ari Sherman, who's here, was the person who said to me, if you're a poet, you need to read the work of Bert Meyers. So that's how I started reading Bert. And even as a college student who didn't know anything, Bert's images just blew me away because he had an uncanny capacity. I could see what he saw. And I just couldn't believe that words could do that. So I'm going to read one of my favorite poems of his that made such an impression on me during that time, and it still resonates. And it also resonates because, as many of you know, Bert died of, was it lung cancer? And when he was 51. And it makes the end of this poem just so poignant to me. This poem is called After the Meal. A suburb of coffee cups. Napkins, those crumpled hills, silverware, freeways spotted with grease, with flesh. And the ashtray, a ghetto full of charred men with grizzled heads who wasted their flame, where every breath scatters its bones and small gray mounds accumulate, then crumble like nations or the knees of elephants. Like a cleaning plant, steam comes through a hole in your face. Your exhaust is the last wild horse that gallops away. Smoke waters the flowers that grow in the lungs. The cigarette, like your life, is a piece of chalk that shrinks as it tries to explain. Bert was self-taught. He dropped out of high school. He read everything, and he worked as a manual laborer, and has many poems about the working life. And this is one of my favorites. This is called Stars Climb Girders of Light. Stars climb girders of light. They arrange themselves in the usual place. They quit before dawn, and nothing's been done. Then men come out. Their helmets fill the sky. Their cities rise and fall, and men descend, proud carpenters of dew. Man, brief as the storm, more than 5 feet of lightning, twisted and beautiful. Man made like his roads, with somewhere to go. I always wonder if Bert at 30 would have imagined that he would spend the last 11 years of his life being a college professor. This poem is called Twilight at the Shop. A whole day at the saw. When they come for the rubbish, I throw myself out with the dust. We smile and smoke and praise what's left of the sun. Dark trees have bottled its light. They glow like many beers. And the last poem I'm going to read is one of my favorites. Bert wrote songs, and one of the qualities of these songs is that Bert had a beautiful ear. For whatever reason, he really wanted to push images forward. So sometimes the quality of his ear is a little less forefronted, but in the songs, it really comes forward. And this one is called Madman Songs. It's a little bit longer than the other ones I read. This will be the last one that I'm going to read. Thank you so much for coming today. Madman Songs. People go home to rest in vaults, curtains soothe their faults, bright windows show their money. I hated home, it caused me pain. Cloudy days and evenings came. I leaned against the iron rain. Someone held me, there was harm. Now each word's an alarm. The man who looks so calm will turn into a bomb. Woman, daughter, son, I wake up and put them on. They hide me from the law. My desire's a blade of grass. I trample as I pass. Fear me, what I hate will fall. In summer, small cones of dirt beside a fence erupt with the weddings of the ants. A moth staggers from a shrub. People turn their sprinklers on to watch the water girls dance on their lawn. I don't go out until they've all gone in. They might come near with large damp wings, love, and other things. When I don't sleep, the crickets weep. When I say my life will pass, they scrape the dark glass. When the wall begins to fall where I strain, they file the chain. When I rise, I wear an orange shirt. A green woman is rinsing her skirt. She imagines me. David's gone, Goliath's strong. Flocks of pebbles bleat their brittle cries of light, fade where the leaves lie, dry harps near a stream. Jacob warmed a rock, the rock, and Jacob dreamed. I'm burning, I'm alone, everyone's a stone, I break my feelings on. I sat on the sidewalk with my own box of chalk, and all day long I made the whole world by myself. That's not the world, they said. Then I rose at dawn, I put a label on. It wore me out by noon. All day I swung a brush to see the buildings bloom. Just painting on a wall won't change a man at all or make the stone turn blue. So I sat down once more. What else could I do? People go home. Twilight's a glass through which they pass. The carver calms his arm and leaves his passion in the grain. The one who ran runs back again. We live in pain. The moon's an aspirin. Thank you.
So really quickly, I went to Pitzer because an English teacher of mine told me that that was where I belonged in the fall of 1978. And I was told by somebody, I was given a list of things I had to do during the 3 or 4 days of orientation, and one was to meet Bert. And so that became a very important relationship to me because I would have other poetry teachers later, but none were so important and none broke my heart so harshly as Bert did. And none were as hard to keep alive as Bert has been. I'm going to start with, so and again, really quick, I'm kind of Dogtown. I'm very LA. I was born in Mar Vista, or born at UCLA, and grew up in Mar Vista, and then top of the hill over Sherman Oaks, and then back on Nielsen Way until my dad died, and then Hollywood Hills again. And then I put myself through the latter part of my Pitzer career by running a falafel joint on the boardwalk. And I live in Santa Monica now. But I'm also a Jew, and Bert was a Jew. So Bert was a Jewish poet from LA. And I've got this great streak of lefties in my family, as does Dana. And Bert was a good old lefty. My aunt knew who he was. She said, "Oh, you mean the picture framer? That guy? Yeah, he was communist too." So I love starting with this because it's a very Jewish poem. The garlic, rabbi of condiments, whose breath is a verb, wearing a thin beard and a white robe. You who are pale and small and shaped like a fist, a synagogue, bless our bitterness. Transcend the kitchen to sweeten the death, our wax in the flame and our seed in the bread. Now my parents pray, my grandfather sits, my uncles fill my mouth with ashes. I'm going to save that for last. The political side. So there's this guy, Atiyah Chousef. I was asking the interweb thing how to pronounce it, and that's about as good as I got. And I think he was either Czech or Hungarian, and he was a bit of a political person, and he was a poet, and he was not successful in any way, shape, or form, except that he got a little money from a patron for his poems, and then he died in his 30s. And this poem is called These Days, homage to Atiyah Chousef. And it's like that earlier poem that still speaks to the politics of today, or several earlier poems, actually. And it also speaks about Europe, and it also speaks about humanity and its lack of intelligence sometimes. These days, everything's bad. The future waits in a button. No one plans. Nobody says 3 years from now. Evening falls upon a porch, bloody, black, and white. It opens like the paper. Someone bursts into flames. Winter, a grim warehouse, delivers the wind. An angry truck rattles by. The inconsolable self strumming its gas pedal, tuning up for the storm. Lies, so many lies. Windows malignant with things, when at last the nail strangles the hammer and even the ant howls. Then rifles, rockets, oh, what a time, what a time. And like an old ideal, the moon's been reached. A few astonished flies wrinkle the dust on its face. Be like the rain that wears a ragged coat and finds a lamp in the smallest stone and sings for nothing from street to street. Okay. This is slightly longer, and then there's a short one, and I'm done. This is the poet. They said, go rise each day with her, become the reliable dough a family needs. I wouldn't. I walked away from the kitchen, the store she was building in her breast. And everything grows dim, like the little stone brought home from the shore. That's one. This is two. What will I bring if I come to your house? A cold wind at the door, bad dreams to your spouse. There isn't a tree in your backyard. The lawns are plastic. The chairs are too hard. No, I wouldn't talk. I'd be full of spite, and I'd strike my head like a match that won't light. 3, woman, mirror of all my sides, I pass through you to the window. When I lay my hand on the grass, forgive me if I call the earth my child. 4, Always poor, he knows the crickets will leave him small jars of money. He waits, he admires a weed. His dreams are addressed. At night by his desk, he becomes a flower. Children are bees in his arms, little pain making honey. How old were you in 1968 when he wrote that, Daniel? All right, and this is the last one. This is the essence. The dark birds. The dark birds came. I didn't know their name. They walked in Hebrew on the sand, so I'd understand. They sang, the sea flowed, though no one made a road. I shivered on the shore when the water closed its door. Then, as I felt the birds return to me, like ashes to an urn, and sunlight warmed the stones, fire undressed my bones.
I don't remember how old I was, but I do remember that my father and I were very close, and we were very affectionate. At 15 years old, 16 years old, we'd walk arm in arm down the street together, and I just loved him like crazy. And though I knew he was difficult, not always the most stable, certainly mercurial person. So I would go to the door, slightly open to his study, and I would look in. And like a animal trainer, I would kind of judge, is it safe to approach? What is his mood? How does he look? How does he feel? And then if I felt I could, there were moments I just look at him and I knew it was not the moment, so I'd just walk away. But most of the time I would go in there and I would just grab his big head and I'd just kiss him in the cheek, just big kisses, and hug him, and then walk away. We wouldn't say a word to each other. We just had this intense affection and connection. So I do remember going in there like a bee and giving him that kiss, putting a little honey in his life. Now, I do think, without exaggeration, that if my father had not met my mother, I do not know if he would have lived to be 30 years old. My mother was the rock of Gibraltar for him, the most important grounding element in his life. And then when he had, perhaps a little reluctantly at first, 2 children, we also became that honey that drew a life of a lot of pain that did end up having a lot of sweetness in the last number of years. So that's, I'd like, as an LA poet, and you too, Ari, in your honor, for all of you LA people, this is it's a poem he wrote to his city, because he was born here and did grow up here. This is many years ago, so maybe if it resonates today, then my father got it right. LA, the world's largest ashtray. The latest in concrete, capital of the absurd, one huge studio where people drive from set to set and everyone's from a different planet. For miles, the palm trees, exotic janitors sweep out the sky at dusk. The gray air molds. Geraniums heat the alleys. Jasmine and gasoline undress the night. This is the desert that lost its mind, the place that boredom built, freeways, condominiums, malls, where cartons of trash and diamonds and ideologies are opened, used, dumped near the sea. He wrote a poem to one of our families in If you don't know her, then you should go right home and discover her. To the artist George O'Keeffe. This is called O'Keeffe. One morning, Georgia O'Keeffe cobblestoned the infinite with clouds. She stared at space. It blushed. She smiled. Fire and sword, mountain range and stream, the vulva's green silk rippled, everything burned to its bone, and a black cross grew from the radiant grave of forms. This is absolutely one of my favorites. And not only, I think this has been an inspiration to a lot of people. A very fine poet and also a student of my father's named Moria Simon, who read with us yesterday in Claremont. I was reading a book of hers yesterday and discovered several poems which just really seemed inspired by this, and she read it yesterday as her favorite poem. So for Bert and for Moria, Pebble. Now, I must say, sorry for talking so much, but I was close to this guy. I felt that he was, there's maybe two generations of people here. Some of you may have heard of the film Captain Fantastic in the last few years. Yeah. Yes. Well, there was one that some people in the room here will have heard of called 1001 Clowns, which was a similar sort of film about a real anti-authoritarian relationship. I think that was an uncle, but Captain Fantastic was a father. My father was like that. He was absolute anti-authoritarian. And I spent an enormous amount of time with him. But basically, if I woke up in the morning, I said, I don't want to go to school. And he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to read my book and take the dog for a walk. So that was the right answer. You know, as far as Bert was concerned, or I would say, I'm going to read my book, and when you're free, we can hang out together. Those were all very valid reasons for much better than going to school. So we spent tons and tons of time together. Now, why do I say this with this book, this poem I'm about to read? This was called Pebble, and it's a series of descriptions to the simplest thing. Now, even though he wasn't formally my teacher, I would say that he was my teacher as the best of fathers could be. He had his dark sides, but in his best sides, I felt like spending my time and oodles and oodles and oodles of time with him was like being in the presence of a spiritual teacher. We would take walks, and everywhere, it was a very intense, passionate man, everywhere, whatever we did, there was always a lesson in it. We would look at something, observe something. He would either wax poetic about what he saw, or he would ask me what I saw. So even though I never became a literary person, and I don't write much, I think that he opened my eyes and being to a way of seeing the world, which is more poetic and of layers. So this is the ultimate for me. It's about the simplest thing, a pebble. Fragment of the first chunk. Irregular moon. Perpetual cloud. The dust's blind eye. The mite's crude planet. Durable friend between the fingers. Destroyer of giants. Something that grows immense in shoe. The boulder's crumb. The rock's quiet child. The flower's pure disciple, wasteland's embryo, despair's gray seed, staunch member in the brotherhood of water polishers, wisdom's jewel, the weed's eternal fruit, the raindrop's tomb. I can hear my fellow readers saying, "You're going too far, Daniel. You're reading too much." But it's okay. I can't really hear them. I can't see them, so I don't know if they're really saying that. You came this far, so we're going to read a little more. In honor of my mother, Odette, she complained at one point to him that he hadn't written her a love poem in a while. So he wrote this, called Gently, Gently. We too began with joy. Then sickness came, then poverty. We were so poor, our children were our only friends. Gently, gently, through anger and pain, love justified itself, like the nails in the house during a storm. Somehow we created hope, reliable drum in the shadow's wrist, a tuning fork on the sidewalk of dreams. At night, I was the one who became a cello, strung with all our roads, where memory hums to itself like a tire, and you, mad as a clarinet, where the street divides, a city of raindrops in a bush, the slow honey that drips from the sky's old ladle, the reason I'm frightened of death. I swear by the wings love spreads at my waist that I'll carry your tune until my tired strings break. That's to Odette. Bravo, Odette. In the old days, and Max and Estelle Novak over here will tell you, in the good old days, which I didn't see, I had an inkling of it. You spent a lot of time in cafes because there was no internet. So, if you wanted to, the World Wide Web was a web of cafe cups. You meet people in cafes, you talk, and you spend time, you sit, you observe the world, you don't browse on a browser. You look out the window and across the tables. And this is his homage to cafes called The Old Cafe. It was one of his song series. The Old Cafe. There's an old cafe open every day and all night long on the boulevard of time. Jeremiah wept there, Plato came to teach. It's where proud Baudelaire stroked his boredom's endless hair, and Gandhi learned to preach. And everyone, at least just once, saw the wonder in the grime, watching people, all the people, on the boulevard of time. You and I sat there when we were young. We saw Joan of Arc talking to her angel. At a nearby table, heard Cain condemning Abel, Marx and Freud trying to analyze the void between reality and desire. And I saw beauty, love, and passion in 2,000 years of fashion always look the same, sitting in the old cafe on the boulevard of time. It's getting late. Come spare an hour and join a table where people spread like petals around a flower, faces bloom like roses, strangers greeting strangers, tourists from the stars, and have a little wine before it closes on the boulevard of time. Now they're really upset, but I'm still going to read one last one. Now, I was a radical little kid, and I got on my father's case, why don't you write political poems? And he kind of, I don't know how, he just maybe just smiled at me or just shrugged his shoulders because he knew I didn't know. That his poems were all very political, not all, but many, many of them. And he was a real humanist, and he had a bittersweet experience in his own life of the world and of people and his parents and his mother and all kinds of things in his life. And he had a bittersweet observation of the world where he saw human beings as pretty grim species. At the same time, he had this humanity and this hopefulness. This one it's also a song. It's called It's All Dissolving. It's all dissolving, like an aspirin in a glass of doom. Speak quietly. There's a microphone in every tree and a White House on the moon. They've killed today and put tomorrow in a cage and feed it promises and lies. Sometimes you're glowing with a silent rage and broken bloodshot eyes. The unemployed are hungry. The boss plays in the snow. It's all dissolving and there ain't no place to go. I felt a raindrop burn. I heard bones crumble in a breeze. Chemicals are everywhere and everything's diseased. The funerals drive by with their headlights on at noon through cancer's crazy city where everyone dies too soon. But when the rich and mighty were at their banquet feeling safe and sound, blind Samson had a vision and pulled the temple down. And yeah, that's it. But we're going to say one little homage to just to end on a different note. How about that? Please humor me for 1 second here. Okay, we'll just end on this. For W.R. Rogers was apparently a poet at Pitzer, who passed away, I think, the year after my father arrived there, and this is he wrote for him, but I think could very well have been a poem that we could say in Bert's honor. I knew a candle of a man whose voice, meandering in a flame, could make the shadows on the wall listen to what he said. Time flowed from a vein that ran its blue crack through his pale forehead. He's done now. You'd need a broom to arouse him now. All things burn before they're dead. Some men are words that warmed a room. And Bert still warms our hearts and this room, and hopefully many others. Thank you. So we're going to conclude, but just to say that there's a box of books out there. I want every single one of you who liked what they heard today to go home with a book. If you want, you pay what you can afford, and if you can't, you take it. So that's it.
I forgot to say something really important, which is that so many people have been trying to keep Bert in print. And when I was able to do this, it could not have happened without Daniel. And I really wanted to say this. You have been an amazing steward of your father's papers and his memory, and this book just doesn't have just poems. It has photographs, it has facsimiles of letters, it has facsimiles of journal entries. And thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so sorry, Dana just set herself a trap.
Uh-oh.
Because the truth of the matter is, it couldn't have happened without Dana. I call her Hurricane Dana because she makes it happen. She makes so much happen, you would not believe it. Recently, he's in journals and reviews and poetry magazine, which he had never been in his lifetime because shame on them. And all kinds of things that are happening are because Dana, who never actually knew him in person, though perhaps by osmosis through his poems, fell in love with his work, and Dana's made this happen. So thank you, Dana.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.